So here's my bullet point, here's my thing that looks a little bit scary, but it just shows straight away that there's loads we can talk about. So the first thing I will talk about, I'm going to zoom in on different parts, different paragraphs, but the first thing I will talk about is that Joe Simpson, who's the writer of the extract, he writes it in the first person. Yeah, so all the way through, if you look at the pink that I did, pink, it's all the way through, it's I, me, my. And this is really interesting because it's done really because it shows his isolation, it shows he's on his own, but it also shows it's personal, it's to do with him, this is going on now. So it makes it a lot more effective, a lot more dramatic because this is happening to the person too. It's not happening to he or she or the man, it's happening to I, me. We can almost put ourselves in that situation. Okay, so let's zoom in on the paragraph. This is the first one. I hit the slope at the base of the cliff before I saw it coming. I was facing into the slope and both knees locked as I struck it. I felt a shattering blow in my knee, felt bones splitting and screamed. The impact catapulted me over backwards and down the slope of the east face. I slid, head first, on my back. The rushing speed of it confused me. I thought of the drop below but felt nothing. Simon would be ripped off the mountain. He couldn't hold this. I screamed again as I jerked to a sudden violent stop. So let's examine it. Okay, so like I said, it starts with my pink here is my first person. So the first person shows it's personal when it's on its own. But also the first sentence, I hit the slope at the base of the cliff before I saw it coming. So this is quite dramatic, isn't it? Because we begin in the middle of the action. We haven't got a slow build up. We're not meeting the character. It's literally we go straight in with I hit the slope. We're in the middle of the action. So that grabs the attention of the reader. And also straight away the first verb that is used in the extract is hit. It has connotations with violence and pain and fighting and physical torture. Yeah. So straight away we're using verbs that show we're even going to be in for like a physical experience. Then it says I felt a shattering blow, splitting, screamed, catapulted, ripped, screamed, jerked. So all this yellow that I've got in my paragraph here, these are adjectives and verbs. So shattering would be an adjective, splitting, screamed, verbs. But all of these connote violence, they all emphasise the pain, they're all visual, we can all imagine these happening, and they all show the power and the pain and the aggression that the mountain holds and the pain that Joe's going through. We've also got sibilance there with the splitting and the screamed. Okay, so again, violence, power of catapulted. It didn't just move him, it didn't shake him, it catapulted him like a slingshot, yeah, over the mountain. Then he says, I slid head first on my back, okay? So we could say the commas there create movement, they make the piece a bit quicker. He slid head first on my back, the rushing speed of it confused me. So this shows that Joe's helpless and no control. It also shows with the confused me that what is happening must be pretty unique for Joe because he's an experienced climber, and if it's confusing him it must be something that is really, really bad. Then he's, again, so he's not just taken off the mountain, he's ripped off the mountain, a violent verb. He couldn't hold this, so short sentence, but it's no doubt that Simon would be ripped off the mountain. And that's interesting because it basically tells us that it's not just one person in danger now, they're both in danger. The audience know it's not just about Joe, but someone else is going to die too. Then he says, I screamed again as I jerked to again, screams, sort of violence and fright, jerked. Pain, power, aggression to a violent stop. The adjective violent, again, pain, power. So the first paragraph you could almost sum up by saying it looks at Joe's physical pain, while the second paragraph looks at his mental pain. So again, just to sum up on the I and me, it's written in the first person, it's using I and me, this shows he's how isolated he is, and it makes it more personal and dramatic because it's happening to the person. So now it's your turn. So I want you to look for freer words or phrases from the second paragraph that make it scary, tense or dramatic. Again, remember the 2 bullet points. Content, what does he say to make it dramatic? And then method, how does he say it? What techniques does the writer use? So here's the second paragraph. Everything was still, silent, my thoughts raced madly. Then pain flooded down my thigh, a fierce burning fire coming down the inside of my thigh, seeming to ball in my groin, building and building till I cried out at it, and my breathing came in ragged gasps, my leg, ellipsis, my leg. So like I said, the second paragraph looks at Joe's mental pain, his internal pain, in contrast to the first one where it's his physical pain. So it starts with everything was still, silent. Okay, that just shows how isolated and alone Joe is. So even though he's broken his leg, if we would have broken our leg maybe where you live or at work or whatever, or at school, you'd have crowds of people around you, the ambulance would be called. However, they are totally alone. They've got no one to help them. They're in a vast sort of mountain setting. Then he says his thoughts race madly. Okay, so the adverb there, madly, shows the state of panic he's in. Then it says his pain flooded down. So flooded, interesting verb. So it suggests that it's not just a little bit of pain, but it's extreme pain. All the way through the extract, they use metaphors to do with fire and to do with water and to do with ice. So flooded sounds like it's almost unstoppable. If something floods, it's never going to stop. It keeps going really quickly. That's how the pain feels. Then he says a fierce burning fire. So this contrasts to the water, doesn't it? The fire contrasts to the water. But the main thing about the fire in the water is obviously the fierce burning fire suggests it's raging, that the pain is really horrendous. But both water and fire are both uncontrollable and powerful. So that's what Joe's saying. That's how he compares his pain. Then it says the pain builds and builds. So the pain and tension. So the pain is building for Joe, but also the tension for the reader is building. We know there's got to be a climax at some point. Then the verb cried is used just to show how pain he is. And then he says he ragged gasp, or again gasp, he can barely breathe in so much pain. Then he says my leg, ellipsis, my leg. So the repetition of my leg suggests extreme pain, and so does the exclamation point. And also it feels like direct speech. It almost feels like Joe's talking directly to the reader there. It comes out of nowhere. He seems to be fairly, even though he's in pain, he seems to be fairly calm, but eventually my leg sounds like he's in horrendous pain. Okay, third paragraph. I hung, head down on my back, left leg tangled in the rope above me, and my right leg hanging slackly to one side. I lifted my leg from the snow and stared up across my chest at a grotesque distortion in the right knee, twisting the leg into strange zigzag. I didn't connect it with the pain which burnt my groin. That had nothing to do with my knee. I kicked my left leg free of the rope and swung around until I was hanging against the snow on my chest, feet down. The pain eased. I kicked my left foot onto the slope and stood up. Okay, so left leg tangled. Yeah, so the verb there suggests he's helpless, almost like an insect caught up in a spider's web. He can't get himself out. Then he says his right leg hanging slackly. So the adverb there just shows how severely injured. Like he's really tense. He's really trying to do his best to get out of the situation, but his almost leg is not a part of his body. So his left leg's almost like lazily, right leg's almost lazily hanging there because he can't do anything with it. It shows how severely injured he is. Then it says he looked at his knee and it was in a grotesque distortion. So the adjective grotesque, what is it? Well, it's hyperbolic, it's very emotive. It almost emphasizes how disgusting it looks. Distortion means it's not quite how it should be, but grotesque means it's like a gargoyle or something. It's like a monster. That's how his knee looks. Then it said it twisted into a strange zigzag. So again, we can all, very visual, we can understand what he means by zigzag. It's detailed, sort of. The adjective strange suggests it's not how it should be. Then it says at the end, his pain eased. So the short sentence used here maybe suggests a bit of a change where he's maybe coming to terms with the pain. We've got a reference with fire where it says it burnt my groin. So again, burnt suggests it's the pain is hot, it's so sore. Then at the end he says we see a bit of a change. To kick my left foot in the slope and stood up. So you could see here he's a bit more determined. Before, where he thought maybe he was definitely going to die, he's now thinking, well, maybe I've got a chance. Next paragraph, a wave of nausea surged over me. I pressed my face into the snow and the sharp cold seemed to calm me. Something terrible, something dark with dread occurred to me, and as I thought about it, I felt the dark thought break into panic. I've broken my leg, that's it. I'm dead. Everyone said it. If there's just two of you, a broken ankle could turn into a death sentence. If it's broken, if. It doesn't hurt so much, maybe I've just ripped something. Okay, straight away a wave of nausea surged over me. So a wave, so he's comparing it to the water. So the wave, this suggests that he's almost drowning in illness and sick. That's how bad he is. It's like a tidal wave. But then the verb surge suggests it's forceful, it's powerful. It's so forceful and powerful, the sickness that he's feeling. Then he says something terrible, something. So the repetition of something there repeated is quite ambiguous. It creates suspense. So he doesn't say what, it's just something. It's pretty vague. But it's also ominous, and it's a realization that he's really something really bad's going to happen. Then he says dark with dread, so sort of dramatic alliteration there. And it occurred to him, I felt the dark thought break into panic. So then, the connotations of dark, what are they? So when we think of dark, we think of pain, death, nothingness, everything that would happen to Joe if he vanished on the mountain. Then he says, so the thought that they're building up to, it says that he's broken his leg, that's it. Okay, so that's it. It's a short sentence. It's certain. It's not I think I've broken it. It's telling the reader absolutely sure it's happened. Then two words really that almost scream out in the whole extract. I'm dead. Just two words. Short sentence. almost like a sort of an arrow right to the reader of this is what's going to happen to me. So it's a short sentence. Again, it's certain, it's accepted he's going to die. Everyone said it. So again, he's an experienced climber, so he's got the experience that everyone, all the climbers, if he asked anyone, if he took a survey, they would all say, you break your leg with 2 people, you're going to die. Then the ellipsis here, so there's a few little ellipses, shows the doom and panic that he's feeling. And then he says it feels like a death sentence. So you can maybe say here that a death sentence is something you do if you commit a crime. I think Joe almost feels like he has committed a crime because he feels like he's been silly and he's got himself into this situation. Then he says, maybe I've just ripped something. So even that verb, rip, suggests, even though he thinks he might not have broken his leg, rip suggests violence and pain. And this is him clinging to hope at the end. Next one, I kicked my right leg against a slope, feeling sure it wasn't broken. My knee exploded. Bone grated and the fireball rushed from groin to knee. I screamed. I looked down at the knee and could see it was broken, yet I tried not to believe what I was seeing. It wasn't just broken, it was ruptured, twisted, crushed, and I could see the kink in the joint and knew what had happened. The impact had driven my lower leg up through the knee joint. Okay, so my knee exploded first of all, so really explicit verb, hyperbolic short sentence. It's almost like his knee was almost like a ticking time bomb, something that exploded. Again, the verb grated sounds horrible, sounds like almost makes us cringe when we think of that. Then it says the fireball, again with the image of fire all the way through. It's another fire reference, massive pain. But if you think about a fireball, it's something sort of like almost like gathers speed. It catches everything in its path. It's unstoppable. The verb screamed again, it's pain, it's explicit. Then we've got ruptured, twist and crushed. So the triplet of adjectives adds impact than just one adjective. Add impact and shows the pain, shows how severe the injuries are. And maybe the worst verb there is crushed. It's almost like a tin can. That's what happened to Joe's knee. Then it said the impact had driven my lower leg up through the knee joint. So it's factual. It's almost no feelings there. It almost shows exhaustion. He hasn't got time for feelings. But it's a really explicit image. It puts the reader in Joe's position. We can imagine how that would feel, and we don't really like the idea. Last paragraph. I dug my axes into the snow and pounded my good leg deeply into the soft slope until I felt it wouldn't slip. The effort brought back the nausea and felt my head spin giddily to the point of fainting. I moved and a searing spasm of pain cleared away the faintness. I could see the summit Sierra North away to the west. I was not far below it. The sight drove home how desperately things had changed. We were above 19,000 feet, still on the ridge and very much alone. I looked south at the small rise I'd hoped to scale quickly, and it seemed to grow every second that I'd stared. I would never get over it. Simon would not be able to get me up. He would leave me. He had no choice. I held my breath thinking about it. Left here, alone? For an age I felt overwhelmed at the notion of being left. I felt like screaming and I felt like swearing, but stayed silent. If I said a word, I would panic. I could feel myself teetering on the edge of it. Okay, so straight away, the verb dug tells us that even though we feel like he's given up, he is still trying hard. The verb dug suggests he's working hard. Then it said, my felt spin giddily, so the adverb here shows his state of panic, that he's almost faint. Then it said, I moved in a searing spasm, so again, it's fierce, it's linking back to the fire, the pain. Then he says, I was not far below it, so it's quite ironic as he's so near, but so far because he's not going to get there. Then the sight drove him more desperately. Yes, again the adverb. Before he would have been happy to be where he was, but now it's desperate. Shows how bad it is. 19,000 feet. So the statistic here it shows how isolated he is. The reader was worried. I would never get over it. So he's accepting defeat. He would leave me. So a short sentence shows the certainty and panic that he knows he's going to be left. And then here we've got loads of short sentences to show his panic. And also this part of the paragraph, the last 4 lines of the extract, here we get an insight into his feelings and emotions. So he says left here alone. So two rhetorical questions in a row shows his panic, his confusion. And this is almost becoming the only thing he's thinking about. So the fear of being left alone has actually become bigger than the fear of pain in his leg. Then he says I felt like screaming, I felt I would stay silent. So all of this is he's trying to contain his emotions. Then he says I was teetering on the edge. So he means teetering on the edge of panic, but we also think as readers he means teetering on the edge physically of the mountain.